change or not. And it is identifying whether the value you can observe here. So check whether the new value is the first value assigned or not. It will check by using a function called isFirstChange. It is a Boolean type. That means what is the previous value? What is the current value? That we can identify by implementing this simple change. So how to use this, I will tell you in a separate example, how to use these changes. So this will work only when we are handling some changes. Currently, we will use only one option first, that is on init. I am not implementing on changes because multiple interfaces also you can implement. Initially, I am implementing only on init, and here we have a constructor. Constructor will first be called. After constructor is called, now this init will happen. In this init, the component memory is initialized. Now when the change will happen, how the change will be accessed and used, this is the important thing we need to know. That means technically how to identify the changes, how to perform some functionalities. So here, no confusion. Simply in real world development process, we use these events to perform some additional functionality. So other than what the functionality it is having implicitly. That means internally it is doing some work. Even you don't write these events are working in the background. These events are working in the background. Then why you are writing these events? Because in addition to those event functionality, we want some more functionality to happen. Some more functionality to happen. Then we configure everything on this initialization. So this you can properly understand with the combination of services and all. As I showed you in the cycle, generally what happens when we are working with services, interactions, data and all, generally on the initialization, we want the connection with the service to establish. After connection with service established, then we need to pull the data and interact with the data by using changes. On changes, we will read the data, we will filter the data, we will sort the data. Different functionalities we will perform on changes. After that, once we finish using the data, we will render the data to the client. So by using view changes events. After rendering the data to the client, we will destroy the connection. Once it is finished, we will destroy the connection by using on destroy. So that means by default, these functionalities will be there, but additionally you are defining these functionalities to make some additional, to handle some additional work. So like connecting with the service, destroying the memory allocated for the service, accessing the data from the service, doing some manipulations on the service. So all this can be done with a combination of services like concept. So when we learn about services, we will see detailedly about these events. But initially, I will show you one more event, how to handle that, right? So that is, we can use an event called changes. How do we work with the changes and how do we use the changes? I will give one simple example for that, right? For that, we need to design as another example. I will show you in another example here. So this example is just to understand which one works first. That means you have seen two things here. One is first constructor. After constructor, ng on init. But before ng on init, ng changes will fire up. That means what is actually the flow? So what is the flow? That means what is first? So first constructor. Second after constructor, ng on changes. Third, the functionality will be related to ng on init. And the fourth will be Fourth will be, so number fourth, it will be ng or do check. That means if manually the changes are not identified, then it will perform this. Then 5, what will happen is fifth, it will be ng destroy. These are the phases. This is the sequence actually. First constructor will be loaded, after that changes, after that on init, after that do check, after that destroy. These are the major options performed. So technically, when to use these, we are going to understand in different examples in the later stage, right? Initially, one simple example we will see how it identifies the changes. What is the previous value? What is the current value? How the data is binded. So that means on changes is going to identify the changes, binding the data and updating the data to the model. So that means in a model, you have some data. It will identify the changes in the data and updates the changes. That means you are going to see how this ng model works. That means how it binds, how it gets the data and updates the data. I told you about two-way binding and how this two-way binding works internally, architecturally. You can practically see that if you can implement this ng changes. For that, we will design one example and see how these changes are identified, right? That we'll see in tomorrow's session, right? These all events we cannot practically implement until or unless we use services and other concepts. So that's the reason just I explained the flow, because in interviews, they will obviously ask this relative questions. What happens on changes? What happens on init? What happens on do check? When to use them? When we need to know about these detailing also. So one example I will give you first, how to handle this on changes. On init, it will generally, you can configure every time. So later also in several examples, we will see how these on changes and others will work. We will see with one simple example. So that we will see tomorrow. So tomorrow we can finish this component cycle. Then we can go into another part, that is pipes, services in Angular, how to work with them. Because in Angular 9, some new things are added into Angular pipes and all. We need to know some new Angular 9 onwards, right? And tomorrow we will finish the component cycle and we can continue, right? I hope you understood all these points. Tomorrow, once I give you the example, then you can go through that, right? So these all notes I will upload. So at the same time, tomorrow, once you understand the complete flow with an example, then it will be clear. Later, because you cannot immediately implement, for that we need to know some more concepts like services and all. Then we can implement this, right?